Bună dimineața, Daniel, bună dimineața tuturor. Mă bucur să fiu aici, mulțumesc pentru invitație. Pare rău că nu pot fi în persoană acolo, dar ne bucurăm de posibilitatea de a comunica așa, folosind mediul online, nu? Îmbinând cele două aspecte. Voi continua în engleză pentru a putea avea o discuție coerentă cu partenerul meu de prezentare, Daniel Rukare. So, hello everyone, and Daniel, I hand over to you.
Well, thank you very much. Happy to be here. Thank you for the kind introduction, Daniel. We look forward to having a discussion regarding this particular topic that we believe is pertinent and relevant for senior executives. Over to you.
Cool, thank you, Daniel. So going further, our talk today is about how e-commerce can impact the business transformation, how companies what they need to do based on the latest trends, reviews, looking to different models and studying various companies and examples, how they can transform their businesses in this what we call VUCA world, in this very, very uncertain world with a lot of things going on and with high pressure and very quick and rapid changes within the business environment where companies do need to operate and adapt. The topics and the points we are going to cover today are looking into how big companies can seek to create innovative business models. What does it mean? How we can identify various opportunities? How we can reframe the future value-based objectives centered around business and consumer behavior. So we also heard a little bit earlier how important it is and how technology size the consumer behavior and translate it into operational solutions and procedures, but also how we can develop partnerships and embed e-commerce to drive this faster growth. So I think these are few fundamental areas of high interest for business across the globe. So we are going to bring a perspective, from a more general, a bit global one, but also coming with very concrete examples. We usually, like to start our presentation looking to a quote which can inspire us through our thinking through the session. And I think this one from Alan Kay is quite representative for the world we live in today. So he said the best way to predict the future is to create it. And I think this makes even more sense if we think that behaviors are changing and consumers are hyper engaged today. They really drive and impact businesses and ask them to be different, ask them to come with some clear and innovative solution, but something which is tailor-made for their specific needs. And this is coming simply because they are very, they are hyper empowered. They are all the time on. They know what's going on. And in these days, in the world we live in today, attention is a reward and not a right anymore. So if you are a brand which used to be, and have a high brand awareness, which used to be top of mind of the consumers, now you really need to fight hard to get attention in this well-connected world. And I think this is even more important if you are looking from the profitability point of view. And here is the result of a study done by McKinsey, the consultancy company, on a pretty wide range of company, or pretty wide sample, around 2,400 companies, where they identified that most of the companies sit into this middle space, which is with roughly flat type of growth, so there is no growth or decline or plus minus 1%. So if you look to this, their performance is not very, very strong into long term. So it is more about surviving than thriving. But on a different note, also we have a 20% of the companies who are sitting in this 20, to the right hand side as I'm looking to the screen. That's that part where I think each company would like to be, because that's basically where the profit is. These are the companies who are really driving exponential growth, and they really have a huge impact on, positive impact on the profit. So it's really very important to understand what companies can do to ensure that, you really do this jump towards that side of the business. And of course, you don't want to be in the other side, in the minus 20% with accelerated decline. So there are a few areas which have been identified as clear opportunities, and how businesses can jump and pass through, from the middle range towards this top 20%. Definitely the tech company, the one using AI and technology these days, are the one driving this growth and being at the front end, but also had been identified that around 10% of the companies from FMCG environment or other industry, which are industries or sectors which are rather stagnant, where which can drive this jump and move into the 20%. So probably the question is how you can transition from this stagnant position to an accelerated growth. So here are a few thoughts we put together with Daniel based on quite extensive research we done and various conversations with quite a lot of companies. So we try to summarize all this thought into some key areas of focus. One, it's about trends. So making sure that you foresee the trends, you really understand as a company what's going on in the outside world, what are the micro trends, and how you can really surf on these waves and capitalize the growth which can come from there. Identify the big moves in some context of transformation. So, for example, how we can identify new fit-for-purpose business models. How can embed e-commerce within and drive differentiation within your business environment, or other solutions like we've seen earlier, automation or AI as part of your logistics solutions or operational capabilities. And I would say last but not least, it is understand how you can define and grow your future-proofing portfolio. Where can you create value and how you can do it? How you can allocate agile the resources you have available, and how drive the digital transformation empowered by big data and AI. And I think these are fundamental aspects which all companies do need to focus on. But let's zoom quickly into some of the key trends we identified at the global level. And basically here it's a summary of quite a lot of research we done and reading and looking into what would be the key one we feel that are shaping and will shape the future here. Of course, data and digitalization is a fundamental and a very, very big and important one. As we see, we have available a wide range of data, and definitely the pandemic pushed us to really jump and accelerate digitalization in all of our companies, starting from simple aspects like working from home and getting the connectivity as we have today, but also implementing AI into various operational capabilities and aspects. So definitely this is here to stay. I think a fundamental aspect of this is how we can harness this data and create relevant insights for our business, and how we can engage with the consumers, because this can help us to really drive high business agility. It is the need to make sure that our business can adapt to fundamental aspects around big changes in the market, can capture big changes in consumer behaviors, and really drive that information and kind of insights which will allow the business to stay ahead of the curve, to stay relevant for every single consumers, and avoid to become the next Kodak. Probably all of us, we know Kodak was having the technology of digital photography, but didn't really been agile to implement it into the business and drive, the extension and transformation of the business, hence does not exist today. While digital photography is the way we do photographies, is the way we share and capture images. And definitely this is a good example to show how important is this hyper-segmentation and making sure that you drive customer experience. But not only this, in this digital environment and the new transformational business setup, it is very important to define and create ecosystems and create partnerships. As you could see, that is very difficult for one company to drive by itself everything. And it's more important to create this partnership to make sure that you transform the business in a more agile way. You become faster, and you have increased capacity to answer the various consumer needs. And I will highlight two kind of other big trends we see happening in the world today, which is of course our inequality and social pressure and this environmental impact. And we see this today more than ever. All this social pressure, all the big movements in the world. Yeah, we are living, across just next to our border. There is a is a big war happening, which will have an impact on the overall global economy. So it is about how companies can interfere and how can adjust and adapt and improve, the way they do business in order to reduce this social inequality. And of course, we talk about environmental impact. Sustainability is fundamental, and we need to define ways to tackle all this global warming or any other big global crisis. But how can we do this? So I'll hand over to Daniel to come with some kind of further idea, and we'll build into some examples. Daniel, over to you.
Thank you very much, Liliana. Well, what is important as companies continue to look at how they can engage with their e-commerce strategies is how they can institute business transformation through future-proofing. Now, we have looked at a couple of things, and we always speak to companies and ask them to look at how they can define and interpret value creation, how they can establish that value creation and build agile resource allocation within their businesses. That obviously would need them to adopt digital transformation that is informed by several new technologies. One of them obviously would be aspects associated with data analytics and big data, because there's a whole economy around data, but also aspects associated with machine learning, AI, that allow organizations to sift through large data sets to be able to provide them with the ability to take decisions that informs that business transformation strategy that they are trying to seek. Now, Liliana and I have tried to look at this in detail. We are very proactive. We have looked at trying to create what we call a three-step value model for future-proofing that allows businesses to grapple through these aspects of enhancing, establishing fit-for-purpose e-commerce strategies and methodologies, but also the most important is how they can do this. So we have come up with this model. The purpose is to respond proactively and not reactively, by the way, proactively to deliver on business transformation. The model has two objectives. Those two objectives are: one, to transform businesses and attain sustainable growth through future-proofing. Now, this sounds simple until you ask organizations to try and do this in practice, and then challenges are faced by organizations. Obviously, aspects associated with determining and defining what the growth path is, the balance between e-commerce portfolios and looking at how to balance that particular growth in selection of markets, optimizing of particular segments, looking at how to support aspects associated with purchasing power patterns and purchasing power parity in terms of disposable income for consumers. All that is part of what this particular model tries to do through something called systemization of innovation. So the model is very simple. It looks at two variables. The variables that it looks at are value and performance. We ask organizations to determine with data sets what their core portfolio is and where their core value sits. That, for me, is where we believe organizations might want to be able to establish. Now, this model can be both qualitative and quantitative in terms of how you interpret it and how you utilize it. So the first one is, are you able to build efficiencies, optimize that core portfolio of the products and services that you may have? Then you look to the next stage, which is basically where you create incremental value. That incremental value was always seated in areas around product, agility, in terms of process, but it could also be in terms of delivering on aspects associated with trust, convenience, pricing options, spreading of cost. All these are expectations of consumers as we actively engage in this competitive e-commerce landscape. Now, the most important part is how you go through those steps of trying to get what we call a transition strategy from step one to step two. Most organizations know they have to make that transition. The question is going to be, do they have the strategies and capabilities to be able to achieve that particular transition? Now, at stage three, we have got this area of radical innovation. And this radical innovation introduces a terminology. It might sound academic, but in business, anti-fragility looks at businesses establishing the resilience and adaptability to be able to create a base upon which they can deal with uncertainty and take advantage of negative circumstances in an economy. Those negative circumstances could be being delivered, just like Liliana talked about in terms of the trends. They could be driven by different circumstances. The question is going to be whether the business itself has got the ability to be able to deal with those uncertainties. So that move from 2 to 3 is what we call disruption. However, we recognize that organizations can move and leapfrog from point 1, which is optimizing the core value, all the way to step 3, which is basically taking advantage of this radical new value. And the radical new value could be new markets, it could be new portfolios, it could be extension, it could be areas that have not traditionally driven revenue for the organization, but are now offering what we refer to as peripheral opportunities, or what we call innovation gaps. So in unison, this is what our 3-step value model looks like. It is one that we are asking organizations to utilize. Happy to have a conversation with anyone who would like to operationalize this. We've operationalized this in a couple of organizations, both small, medium-sized organizations across the United Kingdom and the US. If we could move on, Liliana, we would be able to try and look at how organizations can proactively try and optimize what we call a consumer experience at a time. There's a new phenomenon that is emerging whereby the revenue streams of businesses are now set in what we refer to as the experience economy. So the question is going to be, how can organizations, through their e-commerce strategies, optimize the consumer experience at a time, but leveraging global resources? When you leverage global resources, you're able to limit, or you're able to reduce your operating costs and maximize the possible returns and margins that are given out through your consumer experience that you provide. So this simple formula can be depicted in this simple diagram, whereby companies like Apple are leveraging, and there are several other companies, e-commerce platforms that are leveraging this particular phenomenon, where you actually look at global resources, you adopt those global resources. Some of these global resources are not necessarily exclusive to the use of your organization. However, what is important is the ability for you on the other side to co-create and personalize the experiences that would be able to drive new revenue streams, optimize margins, but also give you the ability to distinguish yourself from your competitor base. This simple diagram can be applied to a variety of fast-moving consumer goods. It can move into more non-traditional e-commerce platforms that provide services. As long as the fundamental principles are sound, the particular CX equals 1 versus GR, which is global resources, can be utilized. Now, as we move on, we'll be able to understand that we need to be able to see how organizations can co-create, how they can establish some form of transforming of the consumer voice, what we refer to as putting the consumer at the center of your strategy development, and building obviously reliable and viable propositions. Those propositions have got to be versatile in their nature. They've got to be able to take advantage of the customer's value requirements as they seek them today, but also provide opportunities for peripheral additional engagement of value that either solves problems or provides gains or allows organizations to product extend, to brand extend, to look at new peripheral markets that deliver on new opportunities. So that co-creation and transforming of the consumer voice is fundamental. Here, you've got to be able to understand that those consumers and insights allow for the design of innovative ideas. This, for us, is the fundamental principle upon which organizations can have prudent strategies that allow them or inform their e-commerce strategies as they build for enhanced performance and improvement. I will at this point look at some of the trends that organizations use in terms of social listening, looking at trend analysis, establishing creative playgrounds. There's a professor at Harvard called Roger Martin who has a lot of research that leading organizations across the US and in San Francisco are using. When he talks about creative playgrounds, he talks about how to win and where to play. That particular playground allows for there to be ethnographic research that builds on propositions that organizations are able to take forward. Next, Liliana. There are several examples, but what I'll do is that at this point, I'll allow Liliana to carry on with some of the examples here that would be able to inform organizations or yourselves on how this transformation can be put in place. Over to you, Liliana.
Thank you, Daniel. I think that was a good example and kind of some thoughts about how we can utilize data, how we can really harness this data we have available today using technology, which is, something which is very, very important for all of us, and they have access to really understand this and get these insights about what consumer want, what do they expect, and how they can, how we can connect with them in a better way possible. So here are some examples of a few companies which succeed to do this in a very relevant and strong way since long time. So at the University of St. Gallen, there is some research done where we see companies from 1610, which been evaluated and see how they transform. It has the index of family business, which provide information of various companies and their evolutions from really from the moment when they had been created. Here we selected a few examples to share with you today. One, it is the Mars company, which, as you can see, transformed fundamentally since the initial creation of the company and their initial products to what we see today, what the company is about. And that's very much can be driven by a few aspects. One was understanding the market, understanding the trends, and understanding what are the opportunities and possibilities which can be explored. It was about a geographical expansion, but not only this. The customer insights are playing an important role, combined with sizing and identifying opportunities for growth and new business models. For example, Roche, it is another good example, or L'Oréal, where you brought initial insights, connecting with consumers, but also looking to identifying clear and very thorough opportunities and new business model, implementing the technology and bringing it up to the standards of that moment in time. And for example, L'Oréal is doing in a very really interesting way the way they engage with consumers, and how by creating some specific applications using data, where you can simply go online and utilizing a certain app to identify what are that kind of products which fit your purpose, which in terms of the colors, if you look to the makeup, or in terms of the hair needs. So really identifying your specific hair needs, or also getting some tailor-made recommendations. And I think that's the future, where we get this engagement, or we get this personalization, and that's what people are looking for. Few other examples I would like to share with you are bringing together examples of identifying and using new business models, but not only this. And I think the one from Philips, the big global company with the headquarters in Netherlands, is a brilliant one. We talk about this pioneering new business models, and they decide, they don't want to sell, and they move from selling various type of products, even it is about our technologies they have as part of their portfolio, to selling services. So they extend really their core business into services, and add this idea of pay-per-looks model, where basically they are selling this service, electricity service, to the Schiphol airport in Amsterdam, rather than selling different elements of, like from bulbs to other elements required and needed into providing electricity in an environment. And that's really, really great also for the receiver, for the airport of Schiphol, because simply they don't need to take care or think of what needs to be done, or don't need to have the resources. They take the service, pay for service, and go further without necessarily needing to have somebody within the company to take care of little bits and pieces. So another one is talking about experience and how we can utilize data and drive personalization this day. It is basically the Johnny Walker experience, which is combined with offline and online capabilities, and that's something which is happening across the board, in many companies. And we see what basically Johnny Walker is doing is bringing consumers in their experiential store. An experiential store which exists offline and where consumers can go and really have a very tailor-made experience, something which makes them feel different and experience Johnny Walker in a completely different way. But at the same time, there is also a virtual experience where, through the use of AI and VR, consumers can be transposed while they're sitting in their home. They can be transposed into this environment. And another one, talking further about the implementation and AI and VR, it is the Google Maps, which currently introduced the imaging part, where you can, which also open other opportunities. It's not just providing information and providing a service to the consumers about, identifying and defining your specific way find your way through a city or find, location of a certain point. It also provides opportunity for communication. So you can very easily engage and add some kind of additional information about certain places. You can connect this with other sites and use other data. So for example, you can highlight a certain restaurant existing and connect with the TripAdvisor and show the details of the restaurant, which will allow customers to get very quickly and reach out and find a place if they are looking for a place to eat. But at the same time, offer opportunity for the restaurant to connect with some customers and drive some advertising. So it's really very much a user-centered experience about what consumers are looking for and how we can adapt and serve and deliver them that kind of information they are looking for. And we talk a lot about engagement and digitalization. Definitely. E-commerce had been and it is a game changer, because basically allow us to connect in a better way with the consumers. And I think we're moving from the models, the classic models of e-commerce, for like the Amazon of the world or eMAG as we have in Romania, to some kind of aspects around direct to consumer solutions, where basically companies or brands are engaging in a straight and direct way with their consumers by delivering them that products they need. And here you can bring few models. One, it is about delivering and creating an ecosystem by delivering more products or that kind of products consumers do need, by creating some packaging, by creating an experience to delivering some adjacent type of products, additional to the ones as part of the core of the business. So extend and go further on. Create subscription models, so then basically you connect with your consumers on a longer period of time rather than have one-off purchase, but also deliver them the product they need at any point in time. And this means you need to adjust the way you have your products and they are delivered. Definitely, it is about moving further and bringing this idea of experience to the next level, but connecting this with the sustainability. Now, we know that sustainability is a very, very big trend, but it is a must. All companies need to embed sustainability within their businesses. So I would like to share with you the example of a company which has been created in US. It is an extension of TerraCycle company, a big global recycling company, which created this extension. It's called Loop. Basically what they are doing, there is an innovating ecosystem to engage with the customers, to use and try to define and engage them to use the packaging for a long period of time. So basically they ask brands they have or products they have to provide packaging materials which can be reused for 100 times, which all will bring one, really, enhance the experience with the brand because you deliver something more interesting and appealing. Second point, it is you reduce the cost for that specific packaging. but also you create, this subscription model, or consumers will buy from you for a long period of time. And then just to further build on this one, it is also about creating a circular ecosystem, because loop doesn't exist by itself. It helps products to be delivered to the consumers in a more sustainable way. But basically that creates an integrated partnership with various brands, and it is about a logistic element included in this one. So basically everything should connect very well to ensure that consumers do deliver and get a new experience. But at the same time, the brand and the packaging is becoming an asset for the brand and not a liability, not a cost. So these are a few examples, but how can we achieve this? I'll hand over to Daniel to share with you a little bit, another tool which we find it absolutely, very, very useful, which allow us to better engage with the consumers. So Daniel, over to you.
Thank you very much, Liliana. So basically, this tool allows us to be able to understand how design thinking can transform insights into disruptive innovations. You move from theory all the way to something tangible that organizations are able to use. So what we do is that you use a lot of data to understand aspects associated with the marketing conditions. That data allows you to get insights into behavior trends, the trends that Liliana spoke about earlier, but it also allows you to get into the next step, which is demand spaces and consumer segments, understanding your consumers best to be able to put the consumer at the center. Once you do that, you move on to understanding and building empathy maps that you're then able to build concepts and test, re-engineer, create what we call feedback loops. Then you start building some form of solutions. Those solutions allow organizations to be able to go to market with a strategy that has actually been fairly tested, so that you're able to minimize and leverage the risk exposure to the businesses. Now, we also have a framework that we believe that organizations can use. This framework is a double diamond framework. It allows organizations to use to identify the specific issues that they have. You would use what we call a converge and diverge methodology. You would collect data. That data could be both in form of primary data, secondary data, but you'd be utilizing all the data that you have. You'd form some form of opinions at that point. You then start building what we refer to as themes and clusters. Those would provide insights. Those insights start creating the initial aspects of deducing opportunity areas for exploitation. And then you'd obviously start asking those questions, how might we? At the intersection between the two, you can do what we call a reframed aspect of the particular challenge that you're dealing with. You start ideate, you build hypotheses, and once you build hypotheses, you start building prototypes. And those prototypes allow you to start testing, learning, iterating. You're able to start repeating some of those aspects that you've learned. You're then able to build propositions that you're able to take to market that have gone through a rigorous process. This here is a simple model that organizations are using, and it's a tool that leading companies are executing. As we conclude, we have a couple of takeaways that we have for you. One is to identify mechanisms in order to optimize your core, and what your core is. We ask that you don't use a single matrix of revenue contribution to determine your core. Number two, build capabilities to be able to understand how to go through transition. You know where you are. I think Liliana spoke about the index that we have looked at of 500 companies, the first of which started in 1610. I'll just repeat that here just in case anyone lost it. 1610. So the question is understanding how organizations transition continuously. And then number three, identify the incremental opportunities that leverage or limit risk exposure. And then finally, you're looking to establish disruptive value capabilities that allow for continuous and sustained growth for your business. With that, we'd like to say thank you very much for listening to us, and we look forward to continuously engaging with you. Thank you very much.
thank you. Of course, if there are some questions, we'll be very happy to take them. I think we are on the, I don't know exactly how we are on the time, so probably we went a little bit over. Sorry for this, but I hope you find interesting informations and key takeaways.
Questions?
Hello, Liliana. Hello, Daniel. My name is Madalina. I'm from Revolut. It was very nice to be here and listen about the results of your studies. Thank you for sharing them with us and about the instruments that we could use in order to be more efficient. I recently read an article regarding a new trend related to consumer profile. We face now a new trend and the concept of this is the consumer activist. I think you tackled already this point, not necessarily naming it like this, but you tackled in your presentation. You mentioned about the consumer engagement, which is, and the consumer which is focused on sustainability and so on. And in the context of the pandemic that we almost overpassed, let's say, and in the context of the war that we have nearby in Romania, a lot of us companies, maybe we over-communicated related to the actions that we have done in order to protect our employees or in order to support people who are suffering due to this war. My question to you is the following one. Do you think that maybe we over-communicate about this and instead of having benefits of doing a lot of good things, we could have a boycott of this new activist profile of consumer that we are facing? It seems like 1 from 7 consumers are having this profile. They're very smart. They can see what's beyond our communication. So do we have any instrument in order to put the right balance in, in communicating what we do in order to avoid to have some overdose? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that's a fantastic question. I think some of the areas around authenticity of communication of value in terms of the products and propositions that we're delivering is important. It counters the narrative of activists that might have their own agenda in terms of what it is that they're trying to communicate. So for me, I think authenticity in communication, having the right tools that are able to provide an alternative narrative that is not necessarily in response, but is out there for your general consumers and prospective customers to be able to understand how you're continuously representing your brand and product portfolios. There's also, there are also other areas whereby you can use satisfied consumers to provide an alternative narrative on through your particular product. And that for me is an area of continuous research, because what that does is that it's not necessarily the organization providing the content, but it is the consumers that are receiving satisfaction from consumption, that are sticky customers and loyal customers that are providing that alternative narrative. But I'll allow Liliana to jump in at this point. She's always been close to customers.
Thank you, Daniel. No, I think that's a great question. There are few things we've seen. I think now building purpose is very important for the companies to stay relevant, and we've seen this being challenged by a lot from investors to some consumers. You know, these activist consumers or some others who tend to not believe in the actions or do not believe what companies do say whenever they say something, or to challenge what companies communicate. I would say as a fundamental aspect of building this purpose for the companies and having a positive impact, it is on society or environment, it is definitely to take actions, point number 1, and then to communicate about them and involve the customer into that communication. So to answer, shortly, it is ignoring that consumers probably is not a solution in my personal view. It is engaging them into the conversation. Try to understand what exactly is driving their behavior in being against and challenging the actions, while there are clear proofs of that specific activities had been defined and executed and implemented. I think bring them part of the conversation, understand what they are looking for, and see how they can get engaged as part of that specific activity. I think that's most important thing. Go beyond just talks, just words, and engage in activities and bring them part of your conversation with broader conversation while keeping authenticity. I think that these are some key aspects which should be taken into account. And I think they've proven to work in various other countries, no matter what the challenge has been. I give a quick example. Unilever been challenged a few years ago about palm oil and where they get this one. So it was really having a conversation with all these activists and providing clear evidence about all the activities they are doing into the space of sustainability really help move further and kind of they become sometimes even part of this conversation. And on the other hand, there are some challenges coming from investors, which will say, why you continue to do such activities? What's going on there? Again, proving them this works and this have a positive impact and drive this consumer engagement and loyalty is very important, because medium to long term, this will bring strong results to the business.
Okay.
We have a few questions from our virtual attendees, but I'm only going to read one. The process you described seems complex. How can we deal with change when we need to change fast? This was the case with the pandemic and now with the war in Ukraine and all the problems that come from these events.
Since I'm, yes, I'll take that and I'll allow Liliana to wrap up. There's something called anti-fragility. Anti-fragility by definition means that you build processes today that are sure to be able to change. What might not be clear is how they're going to change. But what you have is a system that has agility, has adaptability, and is able to thrive in different circumstances. Let me give you an example. We're currently working with a company, and the senior executives asked, what is the next big risk and how can we plan for it? And at a certain point, I thought they were kidding until I realized they were serious. So I said, no. What we need to do is that we need to be able to understand aspects of, imagine that 40% of your customer base moved from online to offline. Imagine that the cost of capital went up by 17%. Imagine that competition or consumer trends immediately changed. How does your business respond? What are the strategies that you have? What are the contingencies that you have? How does your business proactively deal with that? Now, by building those systems and contingencies within your strategy from the onset, it allows you to have agility into your business. That for me is a simple, quick answer of how to address some of the anticipated changes. It's called in strategy with my MBA students, we call that anti-fragility. But I'll hand over to Liliana for a few.
Yeah, I think it is also about scenario planning and really driving alternatives. And if you talk about design thinking, and that maybe looks like a very complex process, but it's very, very simple and straightforward, which allow you to identify wide range of solutions you can utilize and very implement quickly on a shorter scale, really refine them and create something which will allow you to move faster as a certain situation is coming up or the environment is changing. The same it is about our three-step value model. It is about defining where your core is, what is important for there to keep that one stable, but at the same time have different alternatives which will allow you to iterate, will allow you to move and pivot your business towards some kind of some additional directions which will allow you to keep delivering and growing and connecting with your consumers. So having these various extensions, building future core in an early stage, but also looking for the further development of innovations and keep fueling this into your overall business will allow to a certain point on the risk pressure on the core to really move into other direction and implement these new opportunities as part of your business. So, and also I think that's also about agility of the resources. Make sure that the resources you have are trained and prepared to really adjust and adapt and move towards that specific areas where there is a demand. So again, I think it is about, yes, having a specialist, you know, with a lot of knowledge and going deeper into specialization, but allow them, people into organization, if you talk about people, to adjust and move towards different other areas. But at the same time, the idea of partnerships will really allow you to adjust your model or business model and create and size new opportunities. I hope that answered too.
Thank you very much, Liliana. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you very much for having us. Great pleasure, and wish you, really, I'm sure it's going to be a very interesting conversation and conference later on. I wish you all the best.
Thank you. All the best.
Bye-bye.